Hello, writer, and welcome back to my life. Writer Wednesday, the day where I give you my tips and advice on the art and the business of writing, and tell you how I do what I do as an indie author. Today's question comes to us from Patron Sam Reeves, who asks, at what point did you realize that writing quickly could produce good stories, and what triggered that trust? I am warning you right up front, this is going to be a rambly video. It's going to contain a lot of thoughts that are not going to seem to be relevant to an answer to that question, because I've been thinking about this a lot. I've gone through many evolutions in my thoughts and thinking about what makes good writing and how speed of writing plays into good writing. So it's said very often by multiple different people and very successful people in the indie community, and this is something that I have said in the past as well, that when you write fast, when you just get the words out as quickly as you can in your first draft, you tap into a more natural voice for yourself. You write more naturally, and that is a benefit to your style. And I still believe that there is a lot of truth in that, like a lot, but it is something that cannot be taken for granted, and it is something that cannot be applied universally. There are a lot of people who write very, very fast and do not produce a good style. And then, of course, there are so many writers who write slowly and turn out really great and excellent works as well. Less of those in the indie community, because it's harder to build a career that way, but certainly among traditional authors. What made me realize it was possible was just doing it. My very first book was written quickly. Literally hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, I always forget, words of, like random microfiction and fan fiction that I wrote in high school. I wrote that all really, really fast, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the end product. So that was never really a question for me. But in the end, what led to me producing books that I was proud of, not just good, but really proud of, like, yeah, no, this is good, I want someone else to read this, wasn't writing fast. It was editing, and it was learning more about storytelling in general. I've said this before in Writer Wednesday, the more you outline, the less you need to edit, and vice versa. And I really think that's true. What makes my books something that I'm proud of as my work is not that I write them fast. I don't think that their quality comes from the fact that I write them fast. I think that I happen to write fast. I think what makes me proud of them is that I have learned a lot about story, and I know how to tell a story that is exciting and good and pleasing to me, and that I can be proud of. And this is why my outlining process takes as long as it does. And this is why I spend more and more time editing as well. Like, my outlining gets better, but I also take more time editing, not because I have more stuff to fix, but because I am refining my stories more. At this point, and this might change, this is a change from the past, and it might change again in the future. At this point, my first draft is just a kind of annoying roadblock in between my outline and a done book. I don't really like writing first drafts. It's true, I don't. It's my least favorite part of the whole process. I like coming up with the story, and I like editing and refining and getting it right down to, the nitty gritty. At some point during the editing process, it becomes less fun, but I like the initial editing, the initial going through and making the big changes that really start to hone it down. And so, more so than it's ever been, my first draft is something that I get through. It is just something that I get to the end of as quickly as possible. And I think that it is a step towards a good book. But I don't think that fast first drafts is what makes my books good. And I think that's true for other authors. Of course, the whole write your first draft fast to get better books is probably applicable to somebody who takes too long, right? This is just something that I don't have a lot of experience with. Somebody who writes their first chapter and then goes back and edits it, or maybe, rewrites it completely, and then, stops in the middle of a paragraph to go back and fix something and everything like that. Like, knock that off. That's just never going to get a done book. But once you hit a certain level where you are just able to go through a first draft from beginning to end, you are going to start getting better and better stories, not from writing faster, but from learning story craft better and from more editing. At least that's been my experience, and this is a different way of thinking about this than I've ever had before. So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about it. I think that there's something hopeful in that, though. At least I hope that there is, because if it was just based on writing fast, and if you wrote better the faster that you wrote, you would hit a cap at some point. You would hit the point where your fingers could not move any faster and you couldn't get a better keyboard. And same is true if you're using dictation. You would hit the limits of how fast you can talk and or how fast dictation software can understand you. And when you realize that, if you are keeping in mind the most important thing that you can always improve in your craft, you realize that you can't really base it off of mechanics and mechanical limits, like how fast you're going. So the simplest answer to your question, Sam, is that I've discovered that you can write good stories by writing fast and ending up with a good story. And that's the simplicity of how it happened for me. But what I learned beyond that is, to me, much more important, and that is that you need to discover other new ways to make your storytelling better, to make the foundation of your story structure good before you start writing, and then to take something that you have finished writing and continue to make that better. Because otherwise it's easy to get stagnant, and nobody wants to read a stagnant writer. Thank you, Sam, for the question. I hope that this answer was not too far out of left field, and I hope that it was useful to everyone else as well. A reminder for everybody else watching this video, Sam and my other $5 patrons are the only ones who are able to request topics for me to cover in this video series, and they also get these videos 2 weeks in advance of everyone else. So if that sounds interesting to you, to check out my Patreon right over there. You can also see the entire Writer Wednesday series right up there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday. Bye!